Okay, I'd like to call the Corporation of County Bruce Corporate Services Committee Finance and Property Division to order and ask anybody to declare pecuniary interest either now if it arises down the agenda.
I'll declare now on the building in Wyerton that South Bruce Peninsula is interested in and Bruce County.
Thank you. Any other declarations? Hearing none. Okay, moving on to action items. A, review of Section 26D of the Bruce County Procedure Bylaw. And you've seen the documentation that has been attached. I will turn this over to Betty Ann.
Thank you, Mr. Warden. So in the agenda, we have attached a number of the documents, and specifically this is related to Section 26D, which is the opportunity for delegations to council and committee. And I've provided the background, the chronological, and the reason as to why this is back here today, and seeking your recommendations or your direction as to any changes that you would like to see with respect to Section 26D.
Okay, thank you, Betty Ann. Discussions, comments? Mike?
I'm satisfied with the way with the procedural bylaw now reflects it, Mr. Warden. I think it's certainly our and I look at the procedural bylaws as council's ability to conduct their own meetings in a meaningful way with some type of rules and make sure that everybody's got an opportunity to speak to it and input in many ways. So I'm satisfied with it, how it was originally.
Okay. David?
And I am too as well. Our Brockton procedural bylaw and with this, along with this issue is very similar.
Thank you. Robert?
I'm also in favor of this, and I think the 6 months is sufficient. That's what we have too. So I think this is proper to go ahead with this.
Thank you. Ann?
Well, I read it unless I missed something. It all looked fine, very similar to what we have for the municipality of Kincardine.
Thank you. Other comments, questions?
Just
Agree. Paul?
Yeah, the majority seems to be fine with it. I don't know, 6 months, I was leaning towards changing 3 months, but obviously it's not the case, don't worry about it.
Jay?
No.
You're fine? I'm fine as well, so recommendation is status quo. Do we have a mover and a seconder? I think we should just, or is that what you're thinking?
That would be fine to record it as
Record it.
a motion that there would be no amendment to Section 26D.
Do I have a mover? Moved by Mike, seconded by David. Are there any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Action item B, Betty Ann.
There are actually 3 items that are related to the procedural bylaw, that one being the first. The next one is, again, we've provided the background for you and the recommendation that it be, the procedure bylaw be amended to establish an executive committee responsible for matters that are outside the authority and responsibility of all other standing committees, generally related to the long-term strategic goals and operational management of the County of Bruce.
Thank you, Betty Ann. Kelly, did you want to elaborate on that just a little bit?
Through you, pardon me, through you, Mr. Chair, the reason that staff have made this recommendation is we have found with, in particular, a lot of the special work that's being done by the cross-functional teams that impact the entire corporation and the functionality of the corporation. Currently there's no committee that allows for that. So what you've seen is we've utilized council to serve that purpose, and the concern is the council setting is a bit more formal and does not allow for the same level of debate and interaction in terms of the recommendations that have come forward.
Okay, thank you. All right, there is a staff recommendation. Do I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Ann, seconded by Robert. Are there any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor, opposed if any, that's carried. Thank you.
The next item related to the procedure bylaw is the annual review that is done by the Clerk's Department, specifically our Deputy Clerk, Donna Van Wyck, and Donna has prepared a report and with the recommendations related to the meetings open to the public and closed to the public, and she's provided you with the new changes and also a copy of the bylaw which highlights the recommended changes.
So what I read, there's only really 2 or 3 changes? Fundamentally, yes? Okay. Are there any further, or sorry, I need a mover and seconder for the staff recommendations? Need a,
I just had a question. So this was the one around the ombudsman?
Yes, the changes in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy and and the Ombudsman Act.
moved by Ann, seconded by Milt. Any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you.
The next item is, make sure we're, the property tax policy review, favorite of Mayor Smith's, I think. And I did delay this a month presenting this to committee because there are some new changes that are being presented by the ministry in relation to our capping provisions and wanting to have some feedback from the lower tier treasurers. And we're still in discussions related to that. It does not impact this data here, so you will receive a report in the next month or so. We typically pass that bylaw at the July session, so you'll be hearing more information regarding that. Specifically, it's how we move towards current value assessment, and there's certainly the county's position on that as to anything that we can do is to make that happen. That's what we have been trying to do. But this is in relation just to our countywide tax ratios, the tax relief program for low-income seniors, charities, the Legions, and the review of any optional property classes. And so the recommendations, there are no recommended changes. I provided you with the background for each one of those, why those decisions have been made, what their expiration dates are. Also provided you with the current tax ratios, discounts and rates, and then the table 2 is an updated of all of the tax ratios for a number of counties in southwestern Ontario, and I think you can see the changes and how we match up with other areas, particularly in our multi-residential, and that was a decision made a number of years ago to change the multi-residential class to 1 because of our social housing units, and particularly because the county was one of the largest contributors towards the multi-residential class.
Thank you, Betty Ann. There is a staff recommendation. Do I have a mover and seconder? Moved by Mike, seconded by Milt. Just one question with regards to the seniors and persons with disabilities. That $500, is it up to $500 or, okay, so that's, okay.
And I guess I would want to say that I appreciate that the lower tier staff are the ones who administer these programs. So while we pass the policies and put the policies in place and the rules and establish them, it really is the lower tier staff that are at the forefront and that do administer this.
Jay?
Just one question, and I heard a presentation this morning that very hard for businesses to come to Bruce County, and one of the reasons I feel is the rate difference on a commercial business. It's, correct me if I'm wrong, 1.5 or 4, or?
Ours is 1.2 for commercial
1.2.
and 1.7.
For industrial, yeah.
For industrial. What I would offer that is, we'll bring it forward when we get the education tax rate, and that is what really impacts the commercial and industrial. We went back and did an evaluation of it over the years because we would have people say, because our tax rate is not significantly difference between residential and commercial and industrial. It's when the provincial education tax rate is applied, which is significantly different, and I have that information that once we get that for 2016, I'll present a report to committee. I do it annually, but then it really identifies what people are paying for education, and that really is the difference between the commercial and industrial. And when that was initially brought back in, and I think we still have, because I still hear it out in the community where people talk about, and I heard it just recently, not in Bruce County, but it was, they were waiting to pass their budget to get what the school board's requirements were. And I said, the school board's requirements don't impact, because it's not your local school board. It's what's the rate that's established by the province for educational purposes. And when it was originally brought out many years ago, and I always stand by that document, it said that was the province's plan, was to continue to reduce the education tax rate, and that hasn't happened. It has for residential, but not for the commercial and the industrial.
Okay, thank
So
you.
then we hear it from our business owners, right? Ann?
So I was just wondering, what was the ballpark for the Bruce County multi-residential before?
1.1.
It was 1.1, and you just brought it down to 1.0?
No, it's the same.
I know the question that you're asking is before it was 1.1, and I can't remember that off the top of my head, but it was similar to the commercial rate, I think, but I can get that information and provide that to you. But it's been one for,
Long
back to
time.
my memory.
Yeah, so basically the same as the
Yeah, there is no recommendation to change any of our ratios.
Yes. Okay, thanks. No, I was just curious as to what it was before.
Yeah, and I think that table too does provide you with a good snapshot of what the other upper tiers are doing, and you can see where Huron County is 1.1 right across the board. But again, as I said, the commercial and industrial rates, when you look at those rates, when you see our bylaw, you'll see that there's not a significant difference, and that's in one of the information reports later on the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussions? We have a mover and seconder. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you.
This next report is near and dear to our hearts, and hopefully will be helpful for council and staff. It's been something that probably we've had in the works for quite some time, and have had a lot of internal documentation, but to actually bring it forward and to put it into a table that's easily understood, easily accessible, is the purpose. And I do want to commend our Deputy Treasurer, Susan Petrick, in preparing this document and meeting with each of the directors to review not only the reserve balances, but also what it's used for and any notes and comments. So quite often, again, even as the elected officials, you may be presented with a recommendation, we want to use reserves for this, and it's maybe not even eligible, or it's not the intended use of that. So that was the main purpose of going through this and to identify. I did want to just highlight again that the reserve balance that you're seeing there was a draft as of December 31st. All year-end adjustments are not completed, so it is not, those numbers are not final, but you will be presented with that documentation later on after we have the external audit complete. The other item that accompanies this then is what we're looking for approval is the reserve and reserve fund policy. So again, as I said, these items have been all internally documented, internal processes, but it's important that we document what the requirements are so that all staff are very well aware of what the process is. The one new a couple of items that we're looking at and that would make a difference, I just want to get sure, is machine time in our highways department. And just should have had that highlighted for you to make sure that I get it. So annually, that is adjusted, and we have no transportation equipment replacement reserve. So that is the one area where we would suggest that any machine time allocation, so depending on what we're charging out, that it would go to that reserve, but it would also, if there was a deficit year end, it would also fund that deficit. So we think that that's a one step in moving towards getting that replacement reserve for that purpose, and that is a recommendation that's included in this policy and supported by the engineer as well. Well, not the part of funding the deficit from it.
Let's be clear on that,
But it's important that I share that with you, because that wouldn't be fair to our engineer if I suggested that he would support that part of it. So I think it's a big step in moving forward, and there is a staff recommendation.
You have seen the staff recommendation. Do I have a mover and seconder? Ann, Milt, are there any further discussions? Mike?
Just that was a pile of work to
Yes, it
get
was.
all of that.
It was.
And it gives you an idea how many, I wonder sometimes, when you look at that, and I looked at it and read it, and I thought, wow, do we need all those? And at some point, I'm not saying we don't, I'm just saying it's a good exercise to do that, and I think we should look at that on a fairly regular basis to make sure that, as that money sitting there, there might be better uses for it, or
That's certainly our intent going
yeah.
forward.
Well, it was a pile of work, and I commend you people for that.
Ann?
Sometimes you can simplify your reserves, and that's great, but then it's a longer discussion as to where does money come from, or is that the best use? Whereas if you have specific reserve, yes, we can afford that, or we can take some from that. So it's kind of a balance, I think. In the municipality of Kincardine, when I first came on, we had lots of reserves, and we've kind of compressed them. But then there's maybe just more discussion, which you have to decide if that's good, as to the uses out of more general reserves, if you're compressing reserves down, the number of reserves. That's just what I found.
No, I too just want to commend the author of the report, and there was a lot of authoring for all these reports today, actually, so, but getting to reserves, yeah, I mean, we don't know what's coming from one year to the next, we never know what's coming, so it's always nice to have something tucked away, but I do agree, this report sure defines what we have and the possibilities for budgeting in the future, so thanks again.
I will pass your comments on to Susan.
Yes, I just wanted to add too, as a newer counselor, I found it very useful just to go through, so I appreciated all the information.
We're trying to make it as easy as we can for the new council.
I know, and I really appreciate it, all this extra work.
And the old councilors too. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you.
The next item is the fees and charges bylaw, the annual review. Again, this is completed by our deputy clerk, and she has the changes. These changes, of course, are dealt with by the committees, but then consolidated into this document. And Donna has shared that with you. If there are any questions, she'd be happy to respond to them.
There's a staff recommendation. Do I have a mover and seconder? David? Robert, are there any further discussions or questions for Donna? All that work for nothing, I guess, Donna.
I think that's a good...
That's very good, yes. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. Thank you.
The next item is related to the Federation of Canadian Municipalities, and we've had this discussion the last couple of years where we've granted approval to attend a conference that is outside of the province, which our policy, which we just renewed last year, does identify that, and this recommendation is brought forward, and the report, if Kelly, you are the author, anything you would like to add?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the only comment is going back to the strategic plan and the ability to remove red tape from the system and start to look at policies. And this particular policy the way it's currently written, 9 out of 10 times that the warden attends the FCM, you would have to come to council and get permission, because
It's out of province.
10 provinces, it'll always be, 9 out of 10 times be out of province, so just makes it a bit smoother.
Okay, there's a staff recommendation. Do I have a mover and seconder? Mike, Ann, any further discussions? Hearing none, all those in favor, opposed if any, that's carried, thank you. Next item is closed meeting training. So, motion to go in camera? Or, sorry,
Actually, the training will be in an open session.
Okay.
We did invite the department heads to join us, so perhaps Darlene is going, we didn't have an exact time of when that might occur, so we have a couple of choices. We can, if there's any discussions on the information, she's just sending an email out. We've told the department heads to be
standby.
ready, to be on standby, and Donna is going to present that training.
so do you want to move on to the external audit?
If there are any questions, related to any of the information items, the external audit.
Records management. I guess mine would just be under item E, the financial indicator review. Looks, we're low to moderate pretty well across the board, and which is pretty good.
And then item G, I think I could speak to that, perhaps just in regards to the property assessment. If there are any questions specifically related to that, I could just bring that report up. It includes the notional tax rate and the assessment information, and provided some background for that. And then when we, so you can see the assessment and that information, you received it for each of your municipalities, but then see that the residential increase, the greatest increase that we've seen is in the farm and in the multi-residential. Overall, the 5.42, but as has been previously identified, the increase specifically related to growth, which is what we're most interested in, is the 0.95%, and then the difference is the phased-in assessment as we move to current value assessment.
Any questions?
I think it's also interesting to note that the residential assessment continues to count for almost 77%. So again, that also factors into when we start changing ratios and impacts in that regard. And then you can see, if you look at what the county tax rate for 2016, so I always like to equate it to a $100,000 assessment. Most average homes aren't assessed at $100,000, but it does allow the homeowner to equate what their tax bill is going to look like for county purposes. So if you look at our tax rates for residential and farm, if the 0.00374, so they're going to pay on a $100,000 assessment, they would pay $374. If they were a commercial property, they're going to pay $461, which, as I was suggesting, while it is greater, it's not the significant driver of the increased, the taxes. It's the education portion of it. If they are industrial, then it is $654,000. But if we take a look at the educational portion, which of course is not identified here, it is makes a huge impact. It's very significant. So that just gives you an outline of where we're at, and then the estimates that the lower tier municipalities, based on your assessment, what would be collected.
Okay. Is everyone here?
Except
We're
the
missing
presenter.
Brian. Except,
Oh, yeah, okay. And that information Janice didn't bring in.
because your clerk and your treasurer had asked Betty Ann to come make a presentation to committee said no. Here's your info. Because
save us $2 million a year getting for ODSP uploading. We were putting $500,000 a year in reserves for social housing. That's just right off the bat.
Do you want to sit here? Do you want to speak from there? There, you speak there, and then you've got a clicker?
At the hospital. So those other increases offset, just cost of living and everything else.
So we made a commitment to ourselves and to the public that annually in January, we would present a refresher in closed meeting training session. And because of the warden not being able to join us at the January meeting, we believed it was important to delay it until today to be able to include everyone, and certainly inviting the department heads to join us for this training as well. And today, this will be followed up likely next month with some protocol and to put sort of, as our CAO suggested, steps 1 to 10, so that it was very easily to follow. But today is a refresher on our current practices. And I'd like to welcome and thank Donna Van Wyck, our Deputy Clerk, for preparing this for us.
Thank you, Mr. Warden, Council, and staff. The purpose of this training is to provide you with information regarding the statutory requirements and county procedures with respect to council and committee meetings that are closed to the public. Open meetings ensure the open and transparent exercise of municipal power. In 2007, the county adopted an accountability and transparency policy with minor revisions in 2013. The policy ensures the county is accountable to the public for its actions and that its actions are transparent to the public. The county has a procedure bylaw which governs the calling, place, and proceedings of meetings. The county's notice policy identifies the form, manner, and times when notice will be provided to the public regarding the holding of certain meetings. There are frequently heard allegations that members of council have met outside the confines of the municipal offices, not at a scheduled session, and that such gatherings constitute a meeting. Members of council are strongly advised against organizing get-togethers for the purpose of deliberating municipal business out of the scrutiny of the public. Examine the purpose of the event. It is the purpose that may reveal whether the gathering is a meeting that is subject to procedure bylaw and closed meeting rules. There is nothing prohibiting a gathering at a social event, such as a barbecue, or traveling together to an event, such as a conference or seminar, that is not a gathering for the purpose of deliberating on, conducting, or advancing municipal business. Minutes must be taken and kept of all meetings, including both meetings open to the public and closed meetings. Minutes are the corporate record. Minutes require that the resolutions, decisions, and other proceedings be recorded without note or comment. This is a clear indication that the minutes are not to be a full account of all that transpired at the meeting, including who said what on a particular issue. Rather, the minutes are a record of the actions taken. Closed sessions will be necessary from time to time. Council should be wary about overuse and make efforts to clearly comply with the law to enhance transparency and confidence in the conduct of their decision-making. Council has a responsibility to evaluate its own behaviors. There is a limited ability for councils, local boards, and their committees to hold closed meetings. The list of reasons is found in Section 239, subsections 2, 3, and 3.1 of the Municipal Act, and include the reasons listed on the screen, and this one as well. Members need to be familiar with the list of permitted matters for which a closed meeting may be held. Council should strive to minimize the use of closed sessions. It is a best practice in considering a motion for a closed session for members to ask themselves, do we really need to deal with this matter in closed session? Would dealing with it in public harm the interests of the municipality or of anyone else? Members should also familiarize themselves with the requirements imposed by the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act with respect to closed meetings. I will now briefly review each permitted reason for going into a closed meeting. Security of property. This rule covers more than the locks on the doors at municipal facilities. It not only includes the physical assets, but some of its financial records and intellectual property. Security of information and records, both in hard copy and electronic, are included in this exception. Personal matters about identifiable individuals. The first thing to note is that this exception refers to personal and not personnel. While the definition of personal information in the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act is not binding in deciding whether a particular matter should be held in closed session or not, it does provide guidance to members as to what constitutes personal information. Proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land. It makes sense that a council or local board may meet in closed session to direct staff, a lawyer, or agent respecting the acquisition or disposition of real property. It would be patently unreasonable for a council or local board to give instructions in public to someone negotiating on behalf of the municipality or local board. Labor relations or employee negotiations. This exception allows senior administrators to meet with council in a closed meeting to obtain instructions or to provide an update on labor relations or employee negotiations. And a couple of examples are included there on the slide. Litigation or potential litigation. It is imperative that councils and local boards can be briefed and given direction on matters that are either being litigated or where the likelihood of litigation is real in a closed meeting environment. The purpose of litigation privilege is to create a zone of privacy based upon the need for a protected area to facilitate investigation and preparation of a case for trial by the adversarial advocate. However, in order to invoke litigation privilege, the document or documents at issue must have been prepared for the dominant purpose of actual or apprehended litigation. That is, litigation must be pending or contemplated in a realistic sense before a document can attract litigation privilege. Further, the document must have been prepared for the purposes of assisting in that adversarial process. Advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege. Solicitor-client privilege describes the privilege that exists between a client and his or her lawyer. It ensures that clients will feel free and protected to be frank and candid with their lawyers with respect to their affairs so that the legal system may properly function. Although at one time the privilege was restricted to communications exchanged only during the course of litigation, it has been extended by judicial interpretation to cover any consultation for legal advice, whether litigious or not. Matters under another act. The only example I have for this is Section 7 of the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act, and which imposes certain closed meeting requirements in that act. Consideration of a request under the Municipal Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Bruce County Council has delegated the responsibility of the head to the clerk, so this exception to the open meeting rule would not apply. And this is a new one, ongoing investigation by the Ombudsman. This additional reason for going into a closed meeting has recently been added under Bill 8. Refers to the Ombudsman Act and also to sections of the Municipal Act. Educational or training sessions. This section was added to the Municipal Act in Bill 130 during 2006 amendments and provides a limited exception. Use it sparingly for things like training counselors on how to use new agenda software. It is not an opportunity for staff to brief counselors on new or contentious issues. Conduct education and training in public whenever possible. There is also a requirement for a public resolution authorizing the closed meeting that must specifically identify that the purpose of the meeting is for training in accordance with this section. Also, council, a local board, or committee is not able to consider motions at that meeting, where the motion would advance the business of the municipality or local board. This exception has been used by some municipalities to train new councils at the beginning of a term. However, the question to ask is, why is it necessary to conduct training in closed meetings? Much of the training provided to members could and should be done in an open meeting. Before excluding the public from a meeting, council must pass a resolution that indicates the specific statutory authority. The chair of the meeting must read the resolution for going into a closed meeting because it includes the purpose of the closed meeting. Following the reading of the resolution, the chair should ask for a mover and a seconder before proceeding into the closed meeting. We include the resolution directly on our agenda, so the chair should read directly from there. It includes the reasons we go in. In the closed meeting, discussion is limited to the consideration of those items expressly referred to in the public resolution. There can be no discussion or consideration of any other matter at the closed meeting if it was not specified in the resolution. This slide provides you with a couple of examples of resolutions to move into a closed meeting. At the recommendation of our closed meeting investigator, we modified the wording to go into a closed meeting. We also no longer have separate closed meeting agendas. They are now included as part of the open meeting agenda. And the resolution to move into a closed meeting is included directly on the open meeting agenda, as well as being included in the minutes. Voting at a closed meeting. All that can be done in closed session is provide directions to officers, staff, or agents. Such direction usually includes instructions on how to report back to council when the behavior directed has been completed so that council may act if it decides to do so. That action would, of course, be undertaken in open session. The vote for a procedural matter would include motions such as approving the minutes of a previous closed meeting, adjournment, or deferring consideration of a motion. The recommended practice is for all direction motions to be in writing. When possible, the motion should be prepared in advance of the meeting and provided to members along with a written report so that members can be prepared for the meeting. There is no authority for votes other than those authorized in Section 239 to be conducted in a closed meeting. This would include such things as straw votes or a request for a consensus. This slide includes an example of a resolution authorizing the CAO to negotiate property. So do not resume open session and pass a resolution confirming direction giving in closed. You may just have made it public information by doing so. Closed meeting investigation. So until 2008, the only recourse for enforcement of the open meeting law was through the courts. This was not a realistic option for most citizens, meaning municipal officials were rarely held accountable if they closed meetings to the public illegally. As of January 1st, 2008, Ontarians were finally given the right to request investigation of meetings they believe violated the open meeting requirements for municipal procedure bylaws as laid out in the Municipal Act 2001. Under the Act, all municipalities must have an investigator for complaints about closed meetings. By default, it is the Ombudsman's Office. However, the county has appointed AMO through our local authorities services through AMO. The more the public is made aware of the reasons for holding closed meetings and the more the county makes the process transparent, the less likely a request for an investigation will be received. The county received one closed meeting investigation in 2012 and two in 2013. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. Questions, comments from committee? Hearing none? Thank you. We can put it to practice, Betty Ann says. Okay, I need a mover to go into closed. Milt, don't be scared. I'm going to say that. Yeah. And the purpose for going in is to discuss the Bruce County Jail pursuant to Section 239-2A of the Municipal Act related to the security of the property of the municipality or local board, and correspondence from a not-for-profit government agency pursuant to Section 239-2C, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board. Are there any discussions? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. We are now in closed.